Why don't we talk about the struggle over raising the minimum wage to what I think we appropriately acknowledge is already a compromise, that we're talking about $15 and not 20 or $25 an hour, but that we're talking about the minimum wage. And this is a struggle that has been really visible. And Rania wanted to get your take, and I would like to hear your take, Eugene, on what we're seeing play out among Democrats over this struggle. So I guess without really, leading you in any direction, what's your response to where we are right now? I mean, as we go to record this show, we're hearing something about a Senate parliamentarian who has disqualified this as a measure that can be included in the budget reconciliation bill, which is how they're going to do the stimulus bill since they cannot get Republican support.
Yeah, I mean, it's an unbelievable situation in many ways, given how much prominence the Democrats have put on the $15 an hour minimum wage to 2020 by 2025, which is the Raise the Wage Act, that they would then seem to not really want to fight for it and to allow it to be trapped up in these rules. I mean, I think the easiest way to understand sort of the way it's playing out, and you set this up well, Kevin, is the Senate parliamentarian is basically a referee in the context of the Senate. That when there's an issue of like, based on the rules that they set for themselves, by the way, whether or not they have, are doing it the right way. So it's ultimately it's a recommendation. It's not like the Senate parliamentarian has the power to just overrule it. I mean, the vast majority of rules in the Senate are, again, set by the Senate and the House themselves. That's why they have rules committees. So as a lot of people are talking about, Kamala Harris, as the president of the Senate, could just say, no, that's actually incorrect. This is in order. And I am going to bring this to the floor, and we are going to vote on that. So it easily could be done. And the other thing that also goes back to this, and I think it's important about understanding the context of the whole thing, is they don't actually have to do it this way by budget reconciliation. This is really all about is they only have 51 votes, including the vice president, the Democrats. So that's a majority to pass anything they want. But because of, again, rules they make for themselves, there are a range of things that they just agree upon, both sides, that they're only going to have. They're going to allow, you can only vote on them, pass them if they have 60 votes. It's just a made up rule. They just decided it. It's related to the issue of filibustering and different pieces like that. They could change all these things around if they wanted to. But either way, they could just end the filibuster, and they could also pass it by 51 votes. But they don't want to do that, because what the Democrats really want to avoid at all costs is seeming like they're actually doing something. They want to seem that everything is super bipartisan, and that, as Biden and the centrist Democrats and others have said, like, we're not Bernie Sanders, we're not any of these radical people. We want to make some changes from the Republicans, no doubt, but we're going to reach across the aisle. We're going to talk to them. This is American democracy, blah, blah, blah. This is, by the way, why the House also announced yesterday they're bringing back earmarks so they can grease the wheels with outright corruption and passing many bills. And so they want to use budget reconciliation because that's considered a legitimate thing. Like, when you're trying to pass a budget, there's all these different issues, to just do this and pass it quickly after you have some broad agreement. And thus, they have, taken one of the arrows out of the quiver, but they could do it anyway. But they're saying they're probably not going to do that, have Kamala Harris overrule the parliamentarian, specifically because then two Democrats, Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin, would vote against it, and it would lose the whole package. I mean, there's so many things you could say about that, but it really just shows, I think, in the most narrow sense here, that the Democrats, despite making a huge issue out of the $15 an hour minimum wage, now at the precipice of passing it, have just dropped it essentially, and have decided to just, forget do something. I've just dropped it, and it seems are going to move forward without doing this, despite saying it was one of their number one priorities. And it just gives you a sense of who these people really are in the White House and in the Democratic leadership, that when push comes to shove on controversial issues that will make a big difference in the lives of working class people. I mean, you think about the Raise the Wage Act, people are paid so low in America that the average worker who would be affected by this would actually make $3,000 per year extra to 2025. So that's the average. So some people, it would make very little difference, but it just shows you that there are a huge number of people who are making, such low salaries that they literally would be getting thousands of dollars of wage increases every single year from this, just going to 15. And as Kevin pointed out, that's still below where it should be. If the minimum wage was worth the same now as it was in 1968, it would be about just over $20 an hour. So, that really means that 15 is a compromise, and people are paid so low that even that is going to be huge. But the Democrats, rather than give 32 million people in the country a raise, are just going to drop it.
They
But
don't want to do
trillions of dollars every single day to Wall Street through the Federal Reserve.
they it seems like they're not willing to do even the most minimal of anything, whether it's with the minimum wage, whether it's with these relief checks. I mean, they're more invested in fighting to the death to get like Neera Tanden on as head of the budget office, and of like prioritizing bombing countries. And I mean, they it's incredible given the level of suffering and misery in the country right now. Like, we have a basic pandemic depression. You've got 50 million people hungry. You've got another 15 million people, possibly more at this point. That number is from months ago. 15 million people lost their health insurance and have no access to health care because they lost their jobs. And we have this stupid, archaic system of private health insurance that's tied to your employment. I mean, you just see it's like Democrats won't even do the most minimal. Like, it's almost kind of like, did Trump do more? Like, am I mistaken? Did Trump possibly? I mean, it's still early in Biden's presidency, but like, Trump gave out more relief checks. So I just don't know. I don't understand. Like, it seems like a very short-sighted, even as a party. It seems like, I understand they're a capitalist right-wing party, but it seems incredibly short-sighted to not even be willing to go to bat for like the most minimal thing that won't even change and affect that like do anything to hurt the ruling class. They'll still have, all their hoarded money. It's not like they're going to lose much,
Yeah, well, Trump had no problem, using 51 votes to push through those tax cuts and give trillions of dollars to the ultra wealthy. I mean, I think that's really the thing that connects them, is that they are both delivering. The difference is for Trump, he's actually delivering for his base. Biden is against them. But I think I think it's twofold, really. I mean, I think it's, one, a calculation about how much blame they're really going to take. And I think that the Democrats are well aware of the fact that the Republicans are, just so far to the right that the Democrats basically get a participation trophy.
Right.
For a lot of people, because it's like, well, I mean, Jesus, this seems so terrible. I also think, though, that it speaks to how Biden won the election, right? And as much as people don't want to point this out, and as I've laid out, extensively in many places, and I wrote a piece on this you can find at liberationnews.org, the real reason Biden did succeed in the swing states like Michigan, like Pennsylvania, even like Georgia, where there was a lot of things going on, the suburban surge played a huge role. What's the difference between Michigan and Ohio? What's the difference between Pennsylvania and North Carolina in terms of Trump and Biden winning? You can see it very clearly when you look at who turned out. In the states that he won, he got a significant surge, Biden that is, from middle class, upper middle class people in the suburbs who, for whatever reason, were upset at Trump. I think in 2018, that was the same style that the Democrats used to take back the House. It's obvious that for the leadership of the Democratic Party, a big piece of their political strategy is to build a political base of people within the quote unquote middle classes, the better off section of the quote unquote middle classes, that is numerically a decently large number of people, of whom they can build a politics for which the essence of working class politics is not that important, right? So you can sell out on the minimum wage, even if most Democrats want the minimum wage, because you're figuring, well, I'm not getting most of my votes from there. A lot of working class people don't vote. Of those who do, most of them don't think that there's any other choice and would never vote for Republicans. And so you start to look at this and you can see it's their political calculations that they don't really want, despite the phraseology. The Democrats are not really trying to build a political party that's based on exploited and oppressed people. They want the phraseology of being for working class people and for unions. They want the phraseology of being for Black people and for Latinos. But they really want a political coalition that has a minimum of those individuals and a maximum of these suburban upper class whites. And when you look at what Republicans are saying, they are, many of the strategists, they're saying, yeah, we've lost those people to the Democrats, and we're moving on, and that's why we're sticking with Trump. And I think that it's just an important commentary about why these things seem to happen for Democrats, is that they are presenting a face that's not the same as what they're really assembling in terms of the forces behind them. So you have big capital and you have middle class voters who do want this bipartisan, reach across the aisle, hail fellow, well met thing, because it meets their view of mythical American democracy that's been relatively good to them.